Welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast. Football season has officially started with college football games last weekend, but they really start in earnest tomorrow. Several games tomorrow, a few games Friday, lots of games Saturday, some games Sunday, or at least one game Sunday, and then at least one game Monday. And then we get back into Thursday football. NFL starts. So we are in the heart. We're ready to go. Hawkeyes and Cyclones start. However, we're going to start with non-football here. And we've talked about this last week and just in general. Trevor and I both really love Zach Bryan and getting to his concerts as much as we can. And you were able to get to Minnesota in Minneapolis at US Bank Stadium to watch him Saturday night. Now, I had no idea this was all going on, but Minneapolis had to be crazy. I'm going to ask you about all three things. But so you had 70,000 people for Zach Bryan, roughly, or maybe a little less than that with the concert set up. You can answer that here in just a second. Then you had probably most of 20,000 people there because Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever were in town against the Minnesota Lynx in a big-time basketball game because the Lynx are playing really well, one of the top teams in the league. Then obviously that's the closest WNBA team to most of Iowa. You could get, Dubuque area and stuff probably is a little closer to Chicago, but most of Iowa's closest team is Minneapolis to get there. And then also the Twins played. Just so there's another 20, 30. I mean, it holds 40,000. I'm going to guess it wasn't sold out, but I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at. So lots of stuff going on. US Bank Stadium is not super close to Target Center and Target Field, but Target Center and Target Field they're not attached, but there is literally like a walkway and a road between them. That's it. So they are very, very close. So I would really have almost liked to went and seen the difference. And we talked about this earlier this summer when I went up to Minnesota, how dead downtown was for when I was there. And the Lynx were playing. And then, the Twins came into town the next day. I bet that place was an absolute zoo. Trev, talk about your weekend in Minneapolis.
It was very busy with all the things that you just mentioned, the three different events going on, all kind of at the same time. That was a little bit unfortunate. I wish the basketball game maybe could have been, during midday that we could have gone to. But at our hotel, I went down. We did a riverboat ride on Saturday. So I went down kind of in the morning a little bit to clear out my car and stuff. And there was Caitlin Clark T-shirts all over. People from, who knows where. Red Clark T-shirts all over the place. So it was a madhouse. Downtown was definitely busy. We weren't downtown very long, just, maybe 30 minutes before the concert. And then a little bit afterwards, of course. We stayed in St. Louis Park area, which is about 3 miles west of downtown. And if you ever go back to Minneapolis, I'd recommend it. Get a hold of me. I could kind of tell you where to stay. But our hotel right across the street, there was an Irish pub. You literally walk one block and then go across a crosswalk. And you got an Irish pub. We thought we had really good food. A Yard House that is a smaller chain, really big sports bar, dozens and dozens of craft beer on tap. And then down next to it was that Punch Bowl Social that had the indoor bowling alley, pool tables, and all that. And they're all right through there by the hotel. So definitely it was a good area. They stay open late. And yeah, it was definitely busy. The traffic got backed up, to and from our boat ride that we did in the St. Paul area. But it was pretty cool to see all the Caitlin Clark T-shirts, that's for sure.
Yeah, so you were much closer to St. Paul area than you were like really Minneapolis.
We stayed west of downtown, so we were actually.
So you went farther. You went farther away from US Bank Stadium because US Bank Stadium in downtown is on the east side of downtown compared to the Target Center, Target Field. Target Center, Target Field are what I would call west side of downtown, even northwest side of what I would call downtown. Maybe not quite northwest, but definitely west side. Then US Bank is kind of southeast side of downtown.
Yeah, it was a good 15 probably minute Uber ride to get down to US Bank Stadium for the concert. on Saturday. And then during the day, of course, when we did the riverboat tour in St. Paul, that was probably a good 30 to 35-minute car ride, just with the traffic backed up and everything. So yeah, St. Louis Park area, I would highly recommend it. It's safe, lots of good stuff there, and a bunch of hotels that are close within walking distance of anywhere you need to go, really.
Yeah. So, all right. So now, one thing that I have not done, you've done it a few times, is seen Zach Bryan in a big outside venue, big stadium, Denver, Mile High, a couple times now. And then how about being in a big stadium inside? I've seen him obviously in a very small venue, and then a couple, 15,000 outside venues, and then Wells Fargo and CHI Center in Omaha. So 18 to 20,000, but inside. So you've seen him obviously not 70,000 people when he was playing at Mile High the first time for sure. Last time, probably about 70,000 people to watch him at Mile High or not.
Yeah, that's about, I think they said 70 to 80,000. They fill up like three
Yeah.
fourths of the stadium. In the big stadiums like that, he has a bigger stage that they put toward the
Right.
end zone. Same thing they did at the Viking Stadium. It's a big old screen, which I actually like, and I think it's almost better, just the way they play the songs and everything, maybe compared to outside or smaller arenas, I should say. So I kind of prefer the bigger arenas. Typically, I wouldn't say that, but no, the concert was great. We had a really good time. It ended up working out really well because I was supposed to sit away from our group just because we had one extra going than we expected. And the whole row behind Cody and Brett and those guys was completely open. So I just sat in that open row with everybody, which was
Very
nice.
good. Yeah. So just a couple questions there. You guys saw some snap. You guys were a long ways away. And some of that's just inevitable with the big stadium like that, unless you're paying for front row or, down in front. It's just the reality of being in a stadium that big. How was the show being that far apart, but still inside? I mean, I think you kind of expect that when you get to a big outside stadium, but when you're in an inside place, you kind of think it's more, condensed and everything. But I've never been in that stadium. I was in the Metrodome a lot, but that's obviously what replaced the Metrodome. Just how was the concert with being that big inside and then being that far? Just how was the acoustics and how did the show look from where you were?
I thought it was perfectly fine. He has a big back screen. You can see everything is just easy. I mean, it's really good. The vocals are really good. Actually, Turnpike Troubadours played beforehand, and I've heard this from multiple people. Their vocals are not very good in concert, and I kind of have to agree. They were a little disappointing. If you didn't know the songs, you wouldn't even know what they were singing. So there was a big difference. But as far as sitting way up high and way back in those big stadiums, they have a big enough screen and the audio is good. You can see perfectly fine. It's not that big of a deal. And obviously sitting way up high and back like we did, it was cheaper tickets.
Right.
So I think it was worth it. I'm not a young person anymore where I want to go in, the front row or not that there's a mosh pit at Zach Bryan concerts, but I don't want to fight with the crowd all
Right.
night just to stand there.
Yeah, that's what it's fine being in the back and, just like at Hinterland where, everybody's kind of together, but no problem not forcing myself up front anymore. 20 years ago, maybe, but not anymore.
Yeah, same here. It worked out really well. We had a good time. It went too fast, like everything does when you're having fun. We didn't get until Friday afternoon or Friday night, and then next thing we know, it's Sunday having lunch and everybody's heading home. But the concert was really good. And then, one quick note on Caitlin Clark and the Fever. They ended up losing that game that night, but they had a big win tonight versus Connecticut. I don't know if you're watching it there.
Yep.
A big win for them. I saw the Chicago Sky just lost, which is a big loss for them. Now they're fighting for a playoff spot. I think they lost to Atlanta or Washington, whoever they're playing. But the Fever, man, they've really come out. They've really come out firing after this Olympic break.
And we've talked about this. Do you think it helped the Fever in battling this where they didn't have none of their players were on the Olympic team, correct?
Christy Wallace played for a different country, but none of them were on the American Olympic team.
So most of them got a rest. Most other teams that are fighting for playoff spots or one of the top teams, they had players playing, again, for the U.S. or other countries. And just like the Mercury, the first game back after the Fever, they had 3 people on our team. And whether you played every minute or half the time doesn't matter. It just takes a toll traveling, the circus of just the Olympics in general. Just they didn't get the break that mental and physical. And I think the mental part, I think for Caitlin Clark, I think it was just as much physical as it was anything else because of her college season going right in. But some of the others that didn't have the college season, I think a mental break was just as important as the physical break. And I've watched most of the games since the break. And, at the first 5 games of the season, we were ready to fire Christy Sides and hire anybody. It didn't matter. But I think she's got this team so much better, and I think she'll be back. And it'll be interesting to see where they end up and where they get to draft and who they can get. They need one more shooter, and we've talked about that. If they could get one more knockdown shooter, they're going to be tough.
They found it. She was on the bench. It's Lexi Hull.
Yeah, and she started the last 2 games. Yeah, I agree. I mean,
it's sort of similar to the Molly Davis injury. Not that there was an injury, but where obviously Sydney came off the bench and ended up being one of the best 5. This is their best 5 right now, where you've got Clark, Mitchell, Boston, Lexi Hull, and then Alyssa Smith with a couple others coming off the bench. But they found their starting 5. Lexi needs to play. She's really great defensively. She's shooting very hot from 3. It's not going to keep up at this percentage the rest of the season by any means. But yeah, I remember, after the first 10 games, I kind of told you on here, everybody wanted the coach fired. I said, just hold up. Let's give them a little time. They had no really time to practice. They had the toughest schedule, by far to start the season. And I still don't know if she's the right coach or not, but there was no need to fire after the first 10 games. They've really come on the last part of this season. So they are getting better. I think they found their right starting 5. Obviously, like you said, in the offseason, the draft, sure, they do need to add one more shooter. I don't know if Lexi is 100% a full-time starter long-term, but right now she is the 5th player that should be starting.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We watched the game tonight. But yeah, and I think Caitlin Clark is I think she takes some time getting used to playing with. And we talked about it's her passing. She sees things and throws the ball to places that are perfect, but her teammates, it takes time. And I think now you see more balls caught and more layups made. There's still some that you just shake your head like, come on. But the more of them are made and more of them are caught. And Mitchell they interviewed her after the game today, and they're just talking about the relationship, and they're like, it's still only been 4 months. And I think that's what it was really underrated on how fast a turnaround it was to her being drafted first day of practice to the first game. And it didn't matter what type of player, it didn't matter anything, they didn't know each other, just flat out didn't know each other. And now they know each other, and it just takes time. And it's so much better, and it's more fun to watch. And it was a struggle to start. And we're going to find out now. And we've talked about this, and I haven't looked at their schedule a lot, but as long as they keep playing, I think they need to play like Tuesday, Friday, or Monday, Thursdays, and stay away from the weekends the best they can from now on.
Yeah, the schedule's already set for this year, but
right.
We talked about
but going forward,
the things they can do to maybe get better ratings. Yeah, I think like a month ago, I kind of predicted they would finish around 18 and 22. I think now 20 and 20 is in play. I think they've got 9 games left. I see about 5 wins more on the schedule, hopefully, maybe more. But yeah, they're playing really well. they're going to be a problem in the playoffs. I'm not ready to pick them to make a major upset if they're still a 7 seed versus New York or Connecticut in a 5 or 7 game series. But if they could work themselves up somehow to a 5 seed, which would be tough, not impossible, 4 versus 5, maybe they could make some magic happen. But they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs.
And are they 5-game series, 7-game series, 3-game series? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I still haven't looked into it. I need to, but that's definitely one of those things about the WNBA. I'm not sure, but we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, because you go to a 7-game series right out of the chutes, and they're a 7 seed. Really, a no chance for the Liberty or Connecticut. But you get into a 3 or 5 game, and you can steal one on the road, and then you win that first home game, and you're all of a sudden you're up 2-1. You can get there.
Yeah, 3-game series, especially if they were to somehow win on the road the very first game. And I don't know what the exact number is. We'll find out. I could easily look it up. I just haven't yet. But yeah, they're going to be, if they keep playing like this, they're going to be a tough out come the playoffs.
All right, now again, we're on Steve Shetler. We go about 15 minutes, which is about right now. We are going to do predictions of the NFL and Trev's quarterback rankings. So if you want to listen to those, please tune into our podcast wherever you listen: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast. What are some others? Google. Well, Google doesn't have one anymore. It goes to YouTube now. But just anywhere you listen to your podcast, Podbean is another one. We're on almost all of them. If not, send us a DM on our Twitter or anything else like that, and we can get you to one of the spots. But Spotify's number 1, Apple Podcast probably number 2, and then after that you can search any of the others. So going into next here, anything else you want to talk about? Minnesota, Minneapolis, your trip, anything else like that?
It was a great trip, and now we are full blown football mode. We talked about last week. We kind of got the appetizer with college football. Now we're getting the full 5-day effect, which we'll talk about more toward the end of our show. But we did our college football predictions last week, and tonight we're going to do NFL predictions, playoff teams, Final Four, and Super Bowl pick.
All righty. So let's get right to it. I do not have them in any specific order of my 7 playoff teams for each division. So when I do this, just because I say them number 1, I kind of do have the number 1 as my number 1 seed, but like my number 7 is definitely not my 7 seed. I believe I got all the divisions in, at least the division winner, and then the others. If I missed one, make sure you let me know.
Yep.
I'll let you go first. Let's do the AFC first. And I'll just kind of let you go first here.
Okay, I'll go through my 7 AFC teams. We'll start with the division winners, and then I'll give you my 3 wildcard teams. Start with the AFC East. I'm going to take the Bills. I think there's a little bit of an overcorrection going on right now. Everybody's down on them. They have by far the best quarterback currently in that division. I think they've won it 4 or 5 straight years. I don't think there's going to be this major drop-off just because they lost Diggs. Now they lost some other players, so I am going to pick the Bills to win that division. AFC North, I'm going to have the Bengals winning that one. Joe Burrow, hopefully, knock on wood, coming back healthy. That's going to be one of the new playoff teams. Again, we talked about it before. There's always 6 or 7 new ones. So that's one of my new playoff teams in the AFC. AFC South, I'm going to give it to the Texans. I think this is one of the toughest divisions to predict. I think they've got 3 really good teams and one that we just don't know about. AFC West, Chiefs. I mean, as long as Mahomes and Andy Reid are there, just give me the Chiefs every time, just by default. And then for the 3 wildcard teams in no order necessarily, I'm going to have the Jets getting in. Hopefully Rodgers can stay healthy. That's one I'm a little bit iffy on. Second wildcard team is a team I'm really high on, and a coach that I think is the next up-and-coming Sean McVay, Shanahan type guy, is the Indianapolis Colts. Shane Steichen, when Justin Herbert had his best years with the Chargers, Shane Steichen was the OC. Jalen Hurts' best year with the Eagles and the Super Bowl run. Shane Steichen was the OC, and we saw what he did with Gardner Minshew last year. So give me the Colts as a wild card team, one of the surprises in the league. And then the final wild card team in the AFC is going to be the Chargers. This was tough. It came between them, the Ravens, and the Jags. And I'm just going to give Harbaugh a little bit of benefit of the doubt to get them in. I think they've got some really good players all over the team. Their weakness is a receiver, but if we know anything about Harbaugh, he's okay with that.
All right. Yeah, so we've got some definitely different here. Okay, so we're going to go, obviously the AFC West is the Chiefs. AFC South, I have the Texans. The AFC North, I have the Ravens. And that's one you have left out. I've got the Ravens there. And then the AFC East, I have Miami, which is another team you don't have. So I kind of went out on a limb there a little bit. And then my wild cards, let's see here. Yeah, so I got Jacksonville. I know you said they were kind of one of the ones that were definitely questionable left out. And then I have the Bengals, which you have winning the division. I have them getting in as a wild card. And then I have the Chargers as well. I just think Herbert's too good, and Harbaugh wins everywhere he goes.
Yeah, definitely. There's some we agree on there. The AFC is a dogfight. I actually think the NFC is too. This I thought there's a few teams I really like, but other than that, I thought picking the playoff teams was really tough this year. I think the league's in a really healthy spot potentially with this new rookie class coming in and some other guys that might take another step in year two.
Here's my feeling. The NFC is hard to pick 7. Now I think there's less teams that can win it, that can get to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. I think it's definitely top heavy. But I think if you go to the AFC, you can make an argument for several teams to get to the Super Bowl. If you take, the Chiefs are a very heavy favorite. But if you take them out, you could go 5-6 teams to get there very easily. And I think in the NFC, I do think it is very much top heavy, or, just 3 or 4 teams, and that's it. After that, they're not getting the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I would say the NFC, I've got about 4 that I really think could win the Super Bowl. The AFC, I think there's probably about 5 or 6 potentially. But yeah, the NFC is catching up to the AFC. There was a little bit of a gap there for a while, but I believe those 2 conferences are a little bit more even than they have been in a long time. Obviously, the Chiefs are the outlier in the AFC, though.
Yeah, I'd say, they're just the heavy favorite. And I don't know what you do with this. No team's ever won 3 in a row, ever, in the history of the NFL. So that is where you almost have to take the field. But you still have the number 1 quarterback in the world, and it's just hard to bet against him.
Absolutely, it is, and we'll talk a little bit more of that maybe at the end, maybe some betting stuff. But yeah, for me, the one team that was really tough to leave out, besides the Jags, of course, I mentioned, was the Ravens. I'm probably going to be kicking myself for not including them, but they lost a couple offensive linemen. There's rumors that this is by far the worst O-line that Lamar's ever had in front of him, really outside of Lindenbaum and Stanley. So I think that's a concern. They lost their defensive coordinator. So there's going to be a surprise team in each conference that misses the playoffs from the year before.
Yep.
And there's going to be a surprise team in each conference that pops or even makes the playoffs. So my surprise team to miss the playoffs in the AFC is the Ravens.
Right. And I think your Jets pick is really good. If they can stay healthy, one of the prognosticators or whatever have several position groups in the NFL. This is in the NFL. This isn't just AFC. Have the Jets position group as the number 1 position group in the entire NFL. I think it's like D-back. It's several positions, like 2 or 3. It's not just one. So if they can stay healthy and maybe overcome their GM/coaching, failures that I really think they have, and Aaron Rodgers can just be Aaron Rodgers and get it to Brees Hall, who's a top 5 running back, I would say, in the league, they got a chance.
Yeah, their defense is stacked and ready to go. Their O-line has got some good names, but injury history. I think I think one of their biggest weaknesses is tight end and receiver depth wise. If they have some injuries there, I think it could be a concern. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't love the Jets pick on my end, but I think Aaron Rodgers is motivated. They won a good amount of games last year with arguably the worst quarterback playing the league. So I think he gets them in as a wild card.
All right, let's move on to the NFC. I can go first here since you went first with the AFC. 49ers winning the West. And I just, it hurts my soul to do this, but I do think the Packers are going to win the North. I do have the Cowboys winning the East. And then I have the Falcons winning the South. And then my wild cards are the Eagles in the East, the Lions in the North, and I'm going to sneak the Bears in there. So we're going to have 3 teams from the North in there. And that has quickly became what?
We're only off by one team.
Okay, well that's pretty good then. Maybe that, or we're really, really bad when we go back and look at this.
Yeah, maybe we're both really bad. So yeah, for my division winners, the NFC East, I'm going to give it to the Cowboys. I like their momentum more than I like the Eagles. Right. The NFC North and the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, I'm going to give it to the Lions. The NFC South will be the Falcons. Don't necessarily love that pick. Everybody's picking that one. I get it, but Kirk Cousins, 35 off that injury, a coach that is not a proven winner, has got me a little bit nervous. And then probably a little bit of a surprise here, the NFC West. I'm going to give the Rams winning that division this year instead of the 49ers. And then my 3 wild card teams are going to be the Packers, the Bears, and the 49ers. I think the 49ers have a little bit of regression. Brandon Ayuk is not even practicing right now. Trent Williams is still not even with the team. We're getting close now to game time. And those are 2 big players. We know about the Super Bowl hangover. So I still think they make the playoffs, but I could see them being a 10-7 team. They got a lot of tread on the tires with some of those guys. Christian McCaffrey's had a ton of carries and touches over the past couple of years. George Kittle gets hurt. Debo gets hurt. Again, these 2 holdouts come up. So I think there's a little bit of regression for the 49ers.
I have, if you look at mine, I actually have the Rams in and I have them crossed out. And I put the Eagles in as a wild card. So we weren't way off on that. So no, I do think your 49ers talk there is very realistic. We're going to get to here when we pick our championship games and our Super Bowl and everything. But I could very easily see them, like you said, maybe even getting to the Super Bowl, but maybe out of that wild card spot. Just because, Ayuk doesn't play for 3 games. Trent Williams doesn't play for 3 games. Just McCaffrey does get dinged up and misses 5 games. They're still good enough to win a lot of football games, but they're not going to be 14-3 or 15-2. They're going to be, like you said, 10-7, 11-6. Get in on a wild card, and then as long as everybody's healthy at the right time at the end of the year, then they can just turn it on and win. But that would not shock me at all if they aren't the number 1 seed, I guess I should say.
Yeah, definitely. They've got some things going on right now. If you look at the 2 players that are holding out, they got to get Trent Williams done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You and I know football, at least we believe in the same things, quarterback and then O-line, D-line. He's one of the top 5 or 10 left tackles to ever play the game. They need him more than they need Ayuk. Now, they want both of them, of course, but they got to get Trent Williams figured out. That they're not going to a Super Bowl without him, and they will get him figured out. I truly believe that. My surprise miss there in the NFC is the Eagles, and we spoke about it last episode. I love the talent on the team. Like, I really like the roster, but this whole Nick Sirianni thing, he came out and said the owner told him he needs to calm down the sideline. That's just another weird thing that you don't hear a lot of head coaches saying. He basically has no relationship with the quarterback, and they lost Jason Kelsey. So I think this season is going to be, 9-8, and they just miss out by a game. And then I think Bill Belichick is the head coach of the Eagles next year.
That would be Kelsey come out of retirement and go play for Belichick.
Well, I saw the Kelsey brothers just signed a big deal, or they made a bunch
Right.
of money. I didn't have time to read into it, so
Yeah.
I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know if
I
his
don't
knees
think
are gonna.
I don't think so either. I listened to their podcast, and the new series, new season, I guess, because they take a summer break as well, kind of like we've done in the past. It came out yesterday, I believe, and I have not listened to it yet, but so, and he's in every commercial. He's going to be on, he's taken Robert Griffin III's place on Monday Night Football, I believe. So, which that's a story we haven't talked about. Sam Ponder. I think Robert Griffin III is whatever. But I think Sam Ponder being fired at ESPN just a couple weeks before the NFL started is a story. We're not really going to touch it a whole lot, but I do think it's very interesting, the timing of it. And then Mike Greenberg got the job right. Did I hear that right?
Maybe. I'm not fully up to date on everything with ESPN, but I know that they put a lot of money in Stephen A. and Pat McAfee, and because of that, I think there's some cuts for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean that's what they're saying is, she was getting paid over $1 million a year, which is awesome for her. I don't think she'll have a problem finding another job. And the problem with those jobs are, I'm sure in her severance package and everything, she's going to get paid, but she's not going to be able to go. She can't go work at Fox this year. I promise you that. ESPN's not going to let her. So it might be not till next year that she's able to go to CBS, Fox, NFL Network, wherever she wants to go, whatever she wants to do. But you haven't seen the last of her or Robert Griffin III. They're both, I think, pretty good at what they do, and they'll land on their feet.
Severance package, the rules of all that, I don't know exactly how it works, but if she can't, like you said, go work for FS1 or someone like that, she could take a year off. She could do the podcast tour, going with the Kelsey brothers, just keep her name in the media. But yeah, she'll get picked up by somebody.
Yeah. And sometimes I know every once in a while you see it on like local TV that, one person leaves here in the Des Moines market, they leave Channel 8. You don't see them for like 6 months. Then all of a sudden they show up on Channel 13. And you did find out that they started working right away, but they just can't be on camera. They're doing the producing and they're doing the writing and they're doing different things. They just cannot be on camera for a certain amount of time. So those kind of things do happen. And so she might already have another job. And, she's married to a former NFL quarterback. He gets a pension. She's still getting paid. I promise you, she's still getting paid or got a big check to leave when those situations happen. So they're going to be all right.
Yeah, they're not making minimum wage, or they weren't. So they should be they should be all right. We'll see what happens with both of them, but kind of continuing on here with the NFL talk.
Yep.
I did want to get our Final Four picks like we do every year, and then the Super Bowl picks and winner.
Okay.
And I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you go first on these.
Okay. The NFC, I'm gonna have the 49ers and the Packers. And this, obviously the 49ers with Brock Purdy, fine, whatever. Packers hurt me a lot as a Bears fan because the Bears are getting better and better. But I think the Packers have hit on another quarterback, and they've got a good roster, and I think they have a really good coach. I think that coach knows what he's doing, Matt LaFleur.
Maybe the most underrated coach in the NFL, to be honest.
Right. I think he's really good. Yeah, I mean, he's really good. And so 49ers and Packers, they played each other several times in the playoffs here in the last 8-9 years. Some upsets in that situation. both ways, I would say. And then in the AFC, Chiefs in the AFC Championship again at Arrowhead, this time against Miami. This is a team you don't even have in the playoffs. I have them in the AFC Championship game. And this game is not in record cold, so Miami has a chance. There was no chance last year.
Yeah. Well, if you remember last year, my AFC Championship pick was Chiefs and Dolphins.
Right. I do think I do remember that.
Yeah, I was
You weren't
really high
that
on
far
Miami.
off. You weren't that far off, and they got just the way it worked out. They had to play each other in the first round, and then Miami got absolutely just hosed on having that weather there. I mean, they just had no chance.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. If regardless of how the weather is there in Kansas City, I don't trust Tua in cold weather. But that's just me. And then of course, who do you have winning those games and playing in the Super Bowl?
I've got the Chiefs and the 49ers. I got a rematch. I know
Okay.
that's kind of chalk pick and probably the easiest pick, but they're the two best rosters. I truly believe that. And two of the top, I would say it's probably the two best coaches as well. And two of the better quarterbacks, and we talked about, so they have a great roster, got great coaches, and a great quarterback. It's hard to bet against teams that have those.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a rematch is definitely within play.
And it would be, just if Brock Purdy could leave the 49ers to a Super Bowl championship, that'd just be fitting and great to see. But it'd kind of be a no-lose situation Super Bowl, because you'd get Shanahan, who's been close, who's got a great team. They've been really good the last couple of years and just haven't been able to get there with the Purdy injury. And then last year getting all the way to the Super Bowl, having a lead. Mahomes takes it to him at the end. So you get that redemption, or you get 3 in a row for the Chiefs, first time ever. It is a no-lose Super Bowl if you're not just a diehard fan of one of those teams.
Absolutely. A lot of people are making that pick. I don't have the 49ers making it. I just, like I said, I think they've been through a lot of battles, a lot of tread on the tires. I know this.
And
A
I
lot of
think
people are
that's
saying
an
this is
issue for
kind of
the
the last
Chiefs
run.
too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that we've talked about that with LeBron in basketball. When he went to like 4 or 5 straight NBA championships, whether he won or lost didn't matter. That's like a whole nother season of playing basketball, which makes him still playing at this level so incredible, because he's played 20 NBA seasons plus playoffs and been to the finals 8 times or whatever it's been. That's another 2 seasons or more. I'd have to look at the actual amount of games, and then then USA basketball and the Olympics, and I mean, he's played a lot of basketball and escaped injury for the most part. I mean, everybody gets bumps, bruises, or misses a little time here or there, but no major injuries. And that just goes to show you his dedication to fitness and working out and luck. I mean, it's just right. I mean, that's the reality of sports, is a lot of it is just luck.
Yeah. If you're going to play for a long time and get to championship games, a little bit of luck is involved. We've talked about that many times. Fans of teams hate hearing that, but you got to get a ball to bounce your way, a dropped interception, your main players stay healthy. Some guys are just built different, kind of like LeBron and Josh Allen, who we're going to get into. Some of these guys are just physically different. But yeah, the Chiefs have a lot of wear as well. They do have a great defense coming back. They've got some young talent at receiver. So I think they're going to be okay. But as far as giving my picks, I think you went the NFC first. So I'm going to do the NFC for me. I'm going to do Lions hosting the Rams. Stafford comes back to Detroit to try to get back to a second Super Bowl, but I do have the Lions winning that game. I say this somewhat braggingly, but I think I had to be the only person outside Detroit fans that picked them to go to the Super Bowl last year.
They were close
on your podcast, and they were close, and that one still burns. That one's going to burn me for a long time because I just about had it. But I've got the Lions over the Rams. Rams had a great draft last year. Their draft picks this year are looking good. Stafford and McVay, a top level quarterback and a top level coach. I'm just going to bet on that. And then for the AFC picks, I've got the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, since he's been in Kansas City, he's never not made the AFC Championship game. The worst he's ever done is losing overtime. So I'm just going to bank on him being there. It's kind of boring. I get it's not very original, but until he doesn't make the AFC Championship game, I have to put the Chiefs in. I think last year I didn't pick them to go, so I'm not gonna make that mistake again. And the team they're gonna play, this was tough for me. It came down to really two between the Bengals and the Texans. And for me, the Bengals, I do have them winning the division. I'm kind of backing myself a little bit of safety here. I'm going to pick the Texans to play in the AFC Championship game this year. They got the quarterback on the rookie deal. They hit on a ton of draft picks. It looks like they hit on the coach. They brought in Diggs, Joe Mixon, which I actually don't know how impactful both of those guys will be. They'll definitely help, but I don't know if they're going to be superstars like they had been previously in their career. But I really like what the Texans have going. Again, the Bengals with Joe Burrow, he's got the wrist injury still. A lot of people don't know this. That wrist injury of his is a little bit different than most of them. It's been lingering, and he does have an injury history. They still don't have Chase signed. So I'm going to give the Texans the benefit of the doubt to make the AFC Championship. And then I am going to pick the Chiefs to beat them. It's the Tiger Woods factor, the Michael Jordan factor, Mahomes and Andy Reid. I'm just going to bet on to get it done.
Right. And, kind of how we said, actually, if you look at my sheet here, I have the Texans crossed out and changed it with Miami for the championship game as well. So I was close to picking them. I do think they were so good last year and they're ahead of schedule. Do they take just a tad step back? I could see them almost not making the playoffs. I think their division isn't great. They got good teams in there, but it's not elite. So if you lose one or two games, maybe you're not supposed to, and all of a sudden you're out. And then if Stroud would get hurt, that's just it doesn't. That you can say that for every one of these teams. If their number one guy gets hurt, they're out. But yeah, nothing. Can't say anything there. Where I disagree. The Bengals, if they could get there, they are a kryptonite to the Chiefs. Burrow is the guy that gets Mahomes. He's really the only one, but he gets them, and he makes it hard on them every time they play. Like you said, that was the one Super Bowl that he didn't get to. Got beat in overtime.
Yeah, and then the Tom Brady's retired. Yeah. He beat him Mahomes' first starting year, lost in overtime at home. But Brady's retired now. So as far as the guys that actually take him down in the playoffs, Burrow's the only one still active.
Right.
So
Burrow
so
can
stay healthy.
Yep.
That's going to be a big key. So my Super Bowl matchup is Lions versus Chiefs. This was my pick last year, so I hate to do the same pick this year. And then as far as the winner, this is going a little bit out on a limb. I'm going to pick the Lions to beat the Chiefs to not allow the three-peat. And the main reason is I think they've got impact players at every single position group: O-line, tight end, receiver, quarterback, running back, D-line, linebacker, and defensive back. And I'm just gonna bank on the Lions offensive line controlling the Chiefs defense. That Lions offensive line pushed the 49ers around, manhandled them in the first half of that NFC Championship game last year. And I think that's going to continue this year. I think they learned hopefully from their mistakes. They do have a question mark at kicker. So that's a concern for me, definitely. But I'm going to have Dan Campbell and the Lions winning their first Super Bowl.
That city would go absolutely insane.
Yeah, it would be pretty special. But I think the Lions are. If I had to bet on any NFC team to be the number one seed, I'd put about all the money I've got on the Lions. Their roster is just there's not many holes. Their defensive back last year had some weaknesses. They drafted two guys and brought in Carlton Davis from the Bucks. So they brought in three new ones plus others. Receiver, there's a little bit of lack of depth right now on paper. So I would look as Lions as a team at the trade deadline to maybe trade for a guy like Devontae Adams or maybe a lower mid-level like second or third receiver.
So I'm higher. Maybe I should have just went with the Lions. That would made me feel better because choosing the Packers to go really far is hard for me. But I just think I think they've got a lot of the same characteristics as the Lions.
No, the Packers are a good bet. I love everything they got going on offense. They just can't get that defense figured out for however the past many years. They got a new defensive coordinator coming in, which was time. I like the Packers a lot, but there's some people that think either the Texans or the Packers are going to regress and maybe not make the playoffs, which, again, 6 or 7 new teams make it every year. So there's going to be a couple surprises that we just don't see coming.
Absolutely. All right. Now I think it's time for Trev's annual quarterback picks or quarterback rankings. And I think I have it. I did have it looked up, and I forgot to keep the page.
You had a couple good ones last year, but I think I had a bunch of bad ones. So, and this is not while you're pulling that up. This is not fantasy rankings. This is not, if you're the number one quarterback means you win the Super Bowl or anything like that. It's just how good are you? What's my projection of how you're going to finish by the end of the year? What's your team around you? Injury history, roster, all that type of stuff. So not fantasy.
Oh, yep. Here we go. I got it. So let's see. You had C.J. Stroud at number 31.
Yeah, I didn't believe in him. But
no.
And I know
I don't blame you. He's a rookie quarterback. You had Baker Mayfield at 30. He had a team win a playoff game.
Yep, that was a miss.
Let's see. You had Jordan Love at 23. Stafford at 22.
That wasn't too bad for the first half of the season.
No. Purdy at 18. He was MVP until Thanksgiving or Christmas, whatever game that was, where he threw a whole bunch of picks against the Raiders or Ravens. Let's see.
Yep.
You had, Mahomes 1, Burrow 2, Lawrence 3, Herbert 4, Aaron Rodgers at 6. I mean, really, we don't know. He played 4 snaps. I mean, so I guess we could criticize that all we want, but we really don't know.
I hit on Jared Goff. That he was right where I think he played
number
last
7.
Year. I think he had 8, 7.
Yeah, Goff at 7, Allen at 8, Jackson at 9, 2 at 10. You had Fields at 11. It was not good.
Yeah, Fields is a big mess.
Daniel Jones at 12. That's way too high.
Yep.
Kenny Pickett at 16. He's nowhere to be seen. He's not a top half quarterback. Derek Carr was 15. Cousins 14. That's probably about right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ones, and really your ones at the bottom that should be way closer to the top, like a C.J. Stroud. Obviously the rookie had no idea, and the Texans are way ahead of where everybody thought they'd be. Then Baker, really turned it around in Tampa. I think that's a team neither one of us have in the playoffs. If somehow he could play like he did last year, I just don't believe that he will. Tampa could beat the Falcons and get in the playoffs real easily in the South.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. Everybody's picking the Falcons, and like I said, Cousins coming off an injury, old, unproven head coach. There's a real chance that Baker and the Bucs win that division again. But no, there was definitely some good ones, some bad ones. I was a little high on Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, which I'm still kind of high on them, but they may have not had the Lawrence was playing pretty decent last year, 8-3, and then he got hurt. But the rookies are always tough. You never know how these guys are going to do. C.J. Stroud, like you mentioned, I just assumed Ohio State quarterback, not going to work.
And the Texans,
that was my
not good. Yeah,
and the Texans. So I think this year I've got a little bit more conservative list.
Are you going to go from 31 down this year, or 32?
So I'm going to start at 32, and I've got a few cheats, but it's my list, so I can cheat if I want. And we're going to do half of it tonight, and we'll do half of it next week, just because it would take a while. So we'll kind of do 4 at a time. Feel free to interrupt or give your opinions at any time, but we'll kind of go 4 at a time. So at 32, this is one of the cheats. I've got Jacoby Brissett and Drake May. I think the Patriots are really in play for the first pick next year. If you look at their roster on paper, it's one of the worst looking rosters offensively that I can remember seeing in a long time. So I just don't believe in them at all. 31, I've got the Gardner Minshew show there in Vegas. He's leaving Shane Steichen for, again, an unproven head coach. I think he regresses. At 30, this may be a little bit of surprise, and this is another cheat one. This is the Russell Wilson and Justin Fields show there in Pittsburgh. I think this is the first year that Mike Tomlin has a losing season. What I saw in preseason, their offensive line looked horrible. And I think Russell Wilson is basically a shot fighter at this point. You know, I'm a big Russell Wilson fan, but I'm not seeing it with him. So
No, I
I
think
think this is sort
he's
of the
done.
beginning of the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and this will be really hard for Steelers fans. Now, I do think they have a chance to get better because I believe they have, if somehow the 49ers and Ayuk just decide it cannot be done, I think they have one of the trade proposals that I think he's going to at least pay attention to. And the 49ers were okay with trading to the Steelers. So if they all of a sudden get Ayuk, it might change a little bit. That'll help your quarterback a lot. I do think it will be Fields before the end of the year. But I think the 49ers are going to do everything in their power to keep Ayuk. But it just may not be in the cards.
Yeah, they definitely want to keep him just at the right number because they've got a window. They're trying to get back to the Super Bowl and win it. So they definitely want to keep him. If the Steelers were to add Ayuk, it would help. But that offensive line, I've got real questions. Their first couple picks were O-linemen, which I liked. But in the preseason, they did not look organized at all. They look like one of the worst teams I'd saw preseason. So it depends how much you want to read into that. But I think the Russell Wilson and Justin Field days it's not going to be good. At 29, I've got Bryce Young making a little bit of a jump. He's just a really small quarterback. I just don't know if I believe in them. The Panthers ownership is arguably the worst in the league. They have added some talent at receiver, but the O-line's a question mark, and Bryce Young as a player is a question mark. So I have him moving up a tad, but not much. So those are the bottom four, we could call them.
I have heard a little bit of people think that the Panthers are going to be better than people think. And again, that division's not great, and they could get out of that division as well. Have you heard any of that or have any belief in that, or could that? I mean, obviously it could happen. That's the beauty of the NFL compared to a lot of other professional leagues, that those situations do happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been hearing that too. And it wouldn't shock me. Again, there's 6 or 7 new playoff teams a year. There's always a few teams that hit their over on win totals that we're not expecting. That's the beauty of the NFL. With that ownership group, I'll believe when I see it type of deal. So I've got Bryce Young pretty low.
Right.
Moving into the next 4, 28, I've got Sam Darnold. I think we'll have a few moments here and there, but I feel like I've seen enough of Sam Darnold to know that he's I would say a bottom 10 starting quarterback in the league. 27, probably the biggest drop of anybody is Daniel Jones. His preseason was
rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I probably maybe overcorrected a tad, but that feels about right. He feels like a bottom 10 guy in the NFL right now. I was high on him coming out of the draft. I think he's got I think his athletic ability is pretty good, but he just makes a lot of bad decisions, and we don't know about that O-line. Malik Neighbors is a good get. There's just one player. Their running back situation could be pretty bad this year. So Daniel Jones at 27. The 26th spot, Will Levis, kind of a total unknown, just a weird dude. I like the way he plays. Like he likes running guys over and lowering his shoulder. That's awesome. Like as a football fan, it's not smart long-term. You're going to get yourself hurt typically, unless you're like a Josh Allen. So,
and he puts mayo in his coffee, so he's just weird.
Yeah, I can't get on board with that. I'm not a coffee guy, but
I like coffee.
I can't get on that. And then maybe my second surprise to you of this whole thing, or to some, at 25 is Deshaun Watson. I think he's done. I think he's cooked. I don't think he'll ever be great again. The controversy's off the field. I think he's played 10 games in 4 years. I do not buy that he's a viable quarterback.
That is the issue. He just hasn't played. Some of it by his own doing and some injuries. And then I mean, I don't blame him. I don't blame his agent. They offered him a contract. He signed it. I'd do the same thing. So that's not his fault that he's getting paid all this money to not play. But he just has not played football. And so we really have no idea how good he is anymore. We don't know.
He's averaged like 2.5 games a year the last 4 years. That's just I don't think you can come back from that. And the off the field stuff, it's just weird. He's hurt right now too. I almost think there's a chance that Jameis Winston plays some in week 1 versus Dallas, and I almost wonder if Jameis is the best quarterback on that roster. As funny as that sounds, they might end up playing a little bit this season, but they've got to let Deshaun play because they gave him a big contract. But I think, again, like Russell, I think he's a shot fighter. I don't see him being a top quarterback ever again, given all the circumstances.
I do not disagree with that at all.
24 spot, another rookie, Jaden Daniels. I like what Washington's done. I was really considering putting them in the playoffs as a final wild card spot in the NFC. They've had a lot of changes. Again, their O-line is a work in progress, and Jaden's a little bit smaller, but I think he's going to have some moments and some games where you're like, wow, this guy's going to be something. So in his rookie year, I'm going to have him at 24, and then just above him at 23 is Bo Nix. Bo Nix looked like a 5-year vet in the preseason, and I think he's going to do everything that Sean Payton wants here in Denver. Denver was an AFC team that I strongly considered for a final AFC playoff spot. They had a good record last year. I think Bo Nix is going to do everything that Payton wants him to do. So I think Bo Nix potentially is the second best rookie quarterback this year, at least, maybe not long term.
Right.
And
this comes back to he's played a lot of football. So he can set kind of the Brock Purdy situation. Now, Purdy wasn't going to play right away, but when he got in there and it was time, he played a lot of football. He'd known it. And obviously with his dad being quarterback at Auburn and, being at Auburn and then going to Oregon, you cannot substitute playing. And that, Mitch Trubisky, Daniel Jones, there's some quarterbacks that only play 1-2 years, and I do not blame them. If you think you're one of the top picks in the NFL draft and you're a quarterback, you're going to get paid all kinds of money and you're going to be a top 10 guy and a first round guy guaranteed. You have to go. You can't stay in college. But they just haven't seen the reps. And a guy like Bo Nix, yeah, like you said, long term, is he going to have a 15-year NFL career? Probably not. But for this single year, he could be better than, let's just look at the last 2 years quarterbacks, Bryce Young. Would it be completely shocking that Bo Nix has a better statistical season than Caleb Williams? Absolutely not. Now, I think the Bears are a better team than the Broncos, so with everything around them, so he can hand it off and he can dink and dunk to certain guys, and the team might be better, but just statistically saying Caleb Williams versus Bo Nix, it might be Bo Nix. And that, Caleb Williams is a little different. He stepped in, didn't start as a freshman, but he took over the Heisman frontrunner. People forget Spencer Rattler was the favorite to win the Heisman when Caleb Williams stepped foot on Kansas and Oklahoma. And I believe it was against Texas, their biggest rival. Coach Lincoln Riley made the change. And Caleb Williams was Lincoln Riley's guy the rest of the way. Much like, Nick Saban did with Jalen Hurts and Tua. Sometimes you got a really good guy, but that guy behind him's even better. Well, and that's what, when Brock Purdy took over at Iowa State, as soon as he stepped foot on Kansas campus, there was people that said he was the best quarterback the moment he stepped. Now, they didn't start him. They waited a few games, but he was the best guy as soon as he stepped foot on campus. Some people have it.
Yeah, sometimes you just know it. And Bo A lot of people don't like to take too much from preseason. I try to temper my expectations off preseason too, but Bo looked really good. I mean, he was quick, completing all the passes, and I do think there is a chance that he potentially wins Rookie of the Year over Caleb Williams, maybe. But Caleb Williams has a better career overall. It just might not happen year one. So I do think Bo is going to be maybe the second best rookie. As we're moving down the list, Geno Smith at 22. I think we know what Geno is. I was pretty high on the Seahawks last year. I like their roster, still do, but Geno plateaued, which was to be expected. He's a low-end starter, high-quality backup. 21, I've got Derek Carr. I just think there's too much. But Dennis Allen, I think, is a good bet to be the first coach fired of the Saints. I don't even know if he's ever had a winning record in his coaching career with the Raiders. Actually, they might have won 9 last year, so I could be wrong. That's who I'd bet on being the first coach fired. But Derek Carr, I've heard from a couple teammates, they like him, but he's not a run through the wall type of guy. They don't necessarily love him, like a Mahomes or an Allen or a Jackson, some of these other guys. And last year he had some stuff going on with his offensive linemen, with the receivers. I think his brother David Carr is the most unwatchable person on NFL Network. Can't stand him. I can't do it. So I think the Carrs are a weird family. Something's just up with them. They're a little off. So I got Derek Carr there at 21. And moving into 20, and I got Kyler Murray. I don't know what to make of him. Talent's there.
There's times he looks really, really good.
Yeah, talent's there. I mean, he can run around. He's got a heck of an arm, actually. Great baseball player. He can make all the throws, but I just don't know what to make of him. The study habit thing came out. He's socially awkward, which is fine. That's not anything against a person, but when you're a quarterback, vocally, you got to be a leader in the huddle. You got to take charge. And I just don't know if he's that guy. So I've just got him at that 20 spot because I really don't know what to expect of Kyler.
Yeah, he's got more talent. Maybe you could say maybe a Jaden Daniels, you don't know yet. But everybody else, he's got more talent than everybody behind him, and it's not close. But yeah, he's a weird dude and just does things his own way. And again, I don't blame him because football is much more money right away. But maybe baseball was his thing because you think about like Mike Trout, best player in our generation the last 10 or 15 years, and doesn't want the limelight, doesn't need it, but just goes out and plays. Doesn't do commercials. When you're a quarterback of an NFL team, you need to have a little bit of a personality and get out in front and do things and stuff. And that's just not him.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
As we're talking, but as the quarterback, you kind of have to be. It's just part of the business. You're the face of the franchise. So Kyler might have a breakout year. We'll see. It's one of those type of things I'll believe when I see it. And as we get into the final 3 for tonight, looking at my list, and we'll do the next half next week. I'm going to put Kirk Cousins at 19. Age, injury, unproven head coach. Kirk's a pretty good quarterback. If he didn't have the injury, I'd probably have him a few spots higher, but just don't trust him in prime time. I do have the Falcons making the playoffs, but Kirk, there's a lot of uncertainty for me right now.
Now, obviously, Rodgers is a much better quarterback, but do you think one of them? I think we. You look at Rodgers, there was questions if Rodgers could come back at the end of last year. So I'm assuming that his recovery and everything was faster / better than Cousins. But is there anything that you've heard or seen that questions Cousins come back to full health? I mean, obviously there's a question because he's older and it's an Achilles. That just sucks. I mean, he's not going to be what he was, and he wasn't a great runner anyway, but he doesn't have the Aaron Rodgers arm. Rodgers has one of the best arms in NFL history. Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. You can like him, he's weird, whatever, but he is one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. Stats and just his physical attributes, just everything. Kirk Cousins is not that. When you're a mediocre to, I would say, a little bit better than mediocre quarterback, and you have that, and you're not young anymore, and you have that, is there a chance he comes out this year and is just not Kirk Cousins?
I think there's a very good chance, even though I picked him to make the playoffs, I think it's definitely in play. 35, 36 years old, major injury. He's not a mover in the pocket like Rodgers even was. Doesn't have the arm of Rodgers. Again, an unproven head coach. Atlanta is an up and down franchise. They're not the worst franchise by any means in the NFL, but I've got some reservations about Kirk Cousins. Like I said, if he didn't have this injury, I'd probably have him a few spots rated better. But given the injury and the uncertain head coach, I'm putting him there at 19. And then the final two for tonight, 18 is going to be Anthony Richardson of the Colts, kind of middle of the pack. I think he's going to have a lot of weeks where he shines and looks like one of the best players in the league. And I think there's going to be some other weeks where he can't complete a 5-yard pass and throws picks and fumbles and maybe gets injured. But that has a lot to do with Shane Steichen, who I mentioned earlier. I think is the up-and-coming Sean McVay, Shanahan, Matt LaFleur. I think he's the next great big head coach. And I don't know exactly what to make of Anthony Richardson yet. We only got 4 games last year, sample size. But physically, the size, the arm, I mean, he's got all the tools you want.
He is your
quarterback.
NFL Combine perfect example of a quarterback. Kind of, we've talked about like Justin Herbert was kind of that. If you draw a quarterback, it's Justin Herbert. The size, the strength, the arm, just everything. Now, I think with Anthony Richardson, it's not just quarterback. I think you just draw up an athlete. He's a freak show, absolute freak, not just quarterback. Just like, I think if he wasn't the quarterback, and you always see like the NFL, they move, or in baseball, all of a sudden he can't pitch. You move him to catcher or wherever, you move him around. This would definitely be a guy that somehow he can't be quarterback anymore. You would definitely look at him somewhere else because he's that good of an athlete. And can he turn an athlete into being an NFL quarterback?
100%. He's a prototypical athlete. He's big, fast, strong, everything you want. So
he's a guy that hasn't played a lot of football. He's one of those guys that didn't play a lot in college, but has all the tools. NFL Combine specimen. Got told he was going to be a top pick, and he sure was. I mean, you can't blame him. I'd go too. I'd tell my kid, anybody I related to, if you're going to be a first rounder, you got to go. And we'll see if it turns out.
No, you mentioned that just a few minutes ago. If you're going to be a first round pick or a top 10 pick, financially, unless you're Arch Manning, coming from the Manning family where you have a lot of money, most of these guys don't. So that's generational wealth. You got to go, even if it's not the right move, maybe for your career. Financially, it'd be tough to turn it down. So I think Anthony Richardson's going to, like I said, have some weeks where he looks like maybe the best player in the league, and some weeks where he looks totally lost. I think it's going to be a roller coaster, but I do have the Colts in the playoffs. So Anthony Richardson there at 18. And then the last quarterback for tonight until next week is Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
Same thing. Not that he looks like the best quarterback in the league.
Right. He's right in the middle.
Yep. He's got plenty of good weeks throughout the year that he does well. Mike Evans has a good connection there. So I think there's 6-7 weeks where he'll play really well. I think there's 4 or 5 weeks where he'll have some turnovers and just kind of middle of the pack, but a good quarterback.
Yeah, he's, you think about, Kyler Murray coming, with the transfer and going to Oklahoma, winning a Heisman, being kind of, Mayfield is the same thing. He came in, had transferred in, won a Heisman at Oklahoma. He is the face. He has the commercials. He isn't necessarily the best quarterback, but he is a guy that people follow, right or wrong. I mean, he's a kind of a rah-rah guy in commercials, brash. He's your quarterback of the NFL. Number 1 pick, just like Kyler Murray. and hasn't always been great, but he's kind of the opposite of Kyler Murray when he has a lot of the same intangibles and just the way he got to the NFL and everything.
Yeah, if you could combine Kyler Murray's talent with Baker's attitude now that he's matured a little bit, I would say you'd really have something there. So I think Baker Mayfield's about middle of the pack
Yep,
quarterback.
I
Definitely can win a lot of
100%
games. He
agree.
got them to the playoffs last year, and in a hopefully a better correction on my part. But through the first half there, anything stick out? Anyone missing that you're surprised of yet? Just any general thoughts?
Nope. No, I think the one that could be way off this year, I think, is the Steelers with the Wilson Fields. If they don't get to the playoffs, if they don't win 9 games and have that above 500 winning percentage that Tomlin's never had, then you're going to be right. But if they could get right back there and get close to the playoffs or whatever, then they're going to be quite a bit higher than 30th. That's the one that I see that I could maybe make an argument for to get quite a bit higher.
For sure. They've got a great team around them and a good coach, good culture, good ownership. I maybe should have them a little bit higher. With Pete Carroll bailing on Russ, Sean Payton bailing on Russ, and an actual quarterback competition, and what I saw in preseason, I'm the biggest Russ fan. I was, that, but
Right.
I'm not seeing it right now. I'm just down. I'm down on Russell Wilson, down on Justin Fields, but that's my first half of the quarterback rankings, and then next week we will do the top 16.
Yep, very good. Finishing up tonight, college football. Obviously we got the taste last week. Good upset. Georgia Tech kicks the game-winning field goal in Ireland. It was really neat to watch. I didn't watch every play of it, but I watched quite a bit of the game, and it was just neat to see it and all the pageantry and everything, knowing that 1 year from now or then, whatever you want to call it, the Cyclones are in that game where the whole country's watching, kicks it off, big conference game. And that's how I was looking at that game. It wasn't so much that it was Florida State, Georgia Tech. It was next year this is going to be Iowa State. And then it's going to suck that I probably won't be there. But it did make me kind of want to go a little bit more. But it's just a bad time of year to go on a week's vacation.
You might have to work a little bit more with your dad, save up a little money, and go over there next year. That would be a pretty cool trip. But
yeah, it's not
that'd be a bucket list.
Because actually, like, flying to Europe isn't even that bad. Like, if you actually just look at flights to Europe, it's cheaper than a lot of places in the country, or like going to the Caribbean, like I've done, or like especially like going to Hawaii or something. It's cheaper to fly to Europe. It is starting school. It's taking your days. You get 1 or 2 personal days, and then you got to take unpaid days, and it just sucks. And
yeah,
that's the one big downfall of being a teacher is your vacations are set. You can't just pick. You can't just say, I want a week's vacation, August 15th to August 25th, or whatever date it is. Your vacations are kind of built in. That's the
big
downfall.
That's the reality of being a teacher. Your schedule is pretty much set, outside of a few days probably. So that would be tough. But yeah, we got the college football preview last weekend. Didn't get to watch it, but saw the highlights, of course. Florida State went down. And then this weekend, starting tomorrow night, when this podcast will probably drop on Steve Shetler Media, we've got 5 straight days of college football.
Yeah, and there's good games every day. It's we have a golf meet tomorrow in Des Moines, so I won't be back till later, and I don't know exactly what time. But in Colorado, where you're at, Colorado versus North Dakota State, not because it's 2 great teams or anything. It's just, Deion Sanders is a draw, and then all his off, non-football related issues. It's not on field; it's all off field stuff for him. And then North Dakota State's good. Now they're not as good. They're not a 3 or 5-time defending national champ like they've been in the past, but they're still really good. So Colorado's going to have to play well. I mean, I think Colorado wins that game, But I think it's a dogfight, and I'm just glad that Iowa State is not playing North Dakota State, because we got beat. North Dakota State, I think back-to-back years or 2 out of 3 years, whatever, came into Iowa City and to Ames and beat them. Now it was Carson Wentz. It was when they were winning 5 titles in a row or whatever it was. It is a different time now than it was then, but glad we're just playing North Dakota, not North Dakota State.
Yeah, no, you don't want to see North Dakota State on the schedule. There's no doubt about it. They're no slouch. And go Bison, in my opinion. I know we talked last year
I
about.
love to see it, but I do think Colorado does have a little bit too much talent. You can say what you want, but his son at quarterback is really good, and Travis Hunter is one of the best players in college football. They've got 2 of the top players in college football on their team, and you cannot argue that. Now, you can argue a lot of other stuff, but those are 2 really, really good football players.
Yeah, potentially 2 top 10 picks in the NFL draft next year. See what happens. But I told you last year, I loved what Dion was doing. It was bringing a lot of attention to Colorado, which Colorado's not a big college football state for any school. So I liked it, but now it's just been too much with going after former teammates, calling out reporters that you don't like their questions. I just very rarely do I do this, but yeah, I'm kind of rooting against Colorado. I hope North Dakota State wins, and I hope in week 2 Nebraska beats them. So I'll be watching that game.
So you look at their schedule is insane. I mean, North Dakota State, which is no slouch. Then they play Nebraska, which is the big rival. And they got Nebraska last year. But Nebraska, I believe Nebraska is going to be better. Going to be a lot better this year. Matt Rule is a great coach. Obviously a first year of any new coach, you have to set your expectations. You got to set your program. You got to start getting that recruiting in. Now this is the second year. They got the best quarterback in the country on paper. DJU was that as well at Clemson, and he's just never really panned out. So you don't know this, but everything you see here and believe, Nebraska has all the facilities. They got all the money they need. They got a good coach now. They got to be better. And yeah, I think I do think Colorado beats North Dakota State, but I do think they get beat by Nebraska.
Yeah, that'd be okay with me. A little humbling experience. Like I said, bring a lot of attention. And then, if you look at some of the other games as far as tomorrow goes, North Carolina at Minnesota, that's an interesting matchup there at, I think, 7:00 Iowa time. And of course there's other games as well, but Thursday, and then we get into the Friday schedule, I don't think is quite as good. Western Michigan at Wisconsin, TCU at Stanford. But hey,
that's an ACC game. Home of the ACC, Stanford.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't even make any sense. But you're right.
No. Here's what I'm interested to see this week, next week, and really week 3. The first 3 weeks where most of the non-conference games happen is, like an Iowa State, West Virginia, and Penn State, North Carolina, Minnesota. Can these teams from the ACC, Big 12 go into Big 10 teams? Can they go into SEC games and win? And make their argument that if they are at the top of their conference, can they get an at-large bid? I mean, obviously, if they go win their conference, they're in. But if they finish 10-2, 11-1, and they, Iowa State has a win at Iowa, and if Iowa finishes 10-2, kind of in the situation where they're 10-2, 11-1 at the end of the year, with a win at Iowa, who was very, that would be in the mix for the playoff as well, is that enough to get them an at-large bid? Can they get that second team in? That's what's going to be interesting to see. If West Virginia goes and beats Penn State, who I believe we both had in the playoff, a lot of people have them in or just outside. These are opportunities for these conferences to show and to, show the committee and to show college football fans that, hey, it's not just the Big 10 and SEC.
Yeah, definitely a big week for the ACC and the Big 12, like you just mentioned. These are big games and must-win ones because most people think that the Big 12 and the ACC are probably just going to get one team each.
Mhm.
or maybe 1-1 and then another combined. So maybe 3
Right.
total out of the 2.
Yep. One of them will get
We'll
2,
see
and
what
then
happens, of course. Yeah, one of them will get 2, maybe one will get 1. But you're right. This is a big opportunity, and for the ACC, and I think I spoke about this last week. The old Pac-12 teams going into the
right.
Big Ten. Everybody's worried about the O-line and D-line, which I do think is a concern, but I do think they're going to be okay. Like especially at Oregon. Uh, Oregon's building a powerhouse there. I wouldn't be surprised if they win a national title in 5 years or less.
There-
Nike's putting up
Was it
the money.
was it
They've got the right coach.
was it Herb Street that picked him to win the whole thing over Ohio State? He had Ohio State winning the Big Ten. They had him playing 3 times. Obviously, they played in the regular season. I think he had him playing in the championship game of the Big Ten. Then he had him playing in the national championship. I think he had Ohio State winning the first 2, and then Oregon winning the national championship. And that's an Ohio State guy. That's how highly he thinks of Oregon.
Yeah, Dan Lanning is, I think, the real deal.
Well,
Just every year.
was he at Alabama or was he somewhere else, or is he young enough that he just joined Kirby at Georgia? I mean, obviously he was at Georgia. He was kind of Kirby Smart. He was kind of Kirby Smart to Saban. He was that to Kirby Smart. He was his D coordinator, kind of his right hand man. If for some reason Kirby would have left to go to another school or to go to the NFL, Dan Lanning was the coach at Georgia if he wanted to be. Which I truly believe when Kirby was at Alabama, if Nick would have retired or went somewhere else, the job was Kirby Smart. And I do think the only job Kirby was leaving for was Georgia. And it finally happened, and he left, and he's turned it into, and that's who Nick Saban picked to win the whole thing. So that's how much he respects Kirby Smart and his program at Georgia. Dan Lanning is doing the same exact thing. He's running it like an SEC program up there in the Northwest with obvious unlimited money up there.
Yeah, I can't remember if Dan Lanning was at Alabama or not. I think Georgia, but I forget if he was at Bama. I'd have to go back and look. But I do like the way he's building the culture. I just wonder if this year is maybe 1 year too early. Get a new quarterback coming in, which is not the end of the world by any means. But I just wonder if he needs 1 or 2 more years to really build up the program to win a national title. But I think Oregon's going to be perfectly fine. USC we'll see with Lincoln Riley. He better go at least 8-4 or better. I think most of the fans know that this is kind of a transition year. He's got a new D coordinator coming in, but
I think that's what they want to see.
7-5 or worse.
I think if they
finish
would
7-5
finish
or
7,
worse,
5, 8-4, and their offense takes a little step back, but their defense gets a lot better, I think they're going to be okay with that, knowing that hopefully they just continue to get better. But if their defense is bad again and they go 7-5, 8-4, the pressure's mounting. And he's going to be, I don't think he'll be fired this year, but if he goes one more year like that, then I think he's gone.
that's kind of my feeling too. He's going to get this year for sure. And then in the following year, I think just because of I think they gave him $100 million or whatever the heck it was, massive deal, whatever the numbers were. So I think he gets this year, and then he gets another year unless something unravels, something crazy happens. But yeah, he's going to be on the hot seat most likely because I don't have him making the playoffs. Most people don't. They've got LSU week 1. I've got LSU probably winning that game if I had to pick right now. But he's going to be on the hot seat going into year 4. It would be next year.
Yeah, I mean their quarterback is one of the best, and that's never been a question. He's got 3 number ones, or he got more than that. At least 3 number 1 picks now with Caleb Williams, and then Baker and Kyler. And I don't know how long he was there before that, before he was the actual head coach with Stoops. So he might, I don't know. Was Sam Bradford number? He wouldn't have been there that long ago, would he have?
No, not the Sam Bradford, unless I'm way off on my years. But no, he can coach offense. We know that, at least the passing game. It's the O-line. It's the trenches where he needs help in defense. And we'll see. I know he had to fire his buddy, the defensive coordinator.
Yep.
Nobody wants to do that, but it was the right move. It had to happen. So when you're getting paid that much money at USC, the expectations are Final Four championship game soon.
Yep.
When you're getting paid that amount of money.
Absolutely. All right. Obviously there's college football games all this weekend. Obviously I'll be at the Iowa State game, staying, doing whatever. The only downside to doing all that, which, going to Ames and going to Iowa State and being in Jack Trice Stadium, it just doesn't get much better than that. The only downside is you do miss some of the other games. And you can't, I'll have a TV. I'll turn on in the morning. Iowa State's right in the middle of the day. It's at 2:30. So I'll have, game day on, and then the 11 o'clock game will be on TV by the camper and everything. So those, and then after the game, come back, have the TV on, grill, whatever, go over to Willits or Steck's or whoever, Kellerman will be there, and go over and, be at my place or one of their places, doesn't matter where. So I'll be watching games, but it is a little different than if you're sitting at home watching it, where you can flip back and forth. And, we complain, or as a sports fan, you want to go from ABC, ESPN to CBS to Fox. And we had it with cable where you could just go, channel. Now we can't do that with all the streaming and the YouTube and everything. I know someone's working hard at trying to get that back, how to get from app to app without going in and out every time and being able to pause and just things like that. And I know YouTube TV does a pretty good job with that. I do not have YouTube TV, so I guess I'm not super familiar with that. And I believe YouTube TV also has like a 4-screen thing that you can watch. I guess my thing is I just don't have that. I have access to Dish Network and the apps through that. So that's what I watch. And it works pretty good because you can still do that. But I know most people don't have the Dish Network interface and everything. So.
Yeah, that definitely is one of the things that sucks, is all these games being on different networks. Obviously, if you have Dish or cable still, which is kind of, it seems like it's dying out, you can just flip the channels. And then also, as you mentioned, if you go to a game at Iowa State or Iowa, if you're tailgating and stuff, you're going to miss a lot of the action because you're going to be talking to people, mingling. You'll see some of it, of course, on the TV, but that is one of the few downsides, I guess I would say, of tailgating, because there's not many. The only thing that I kind of, it's happening here right now is summer's coming to an end. So we know winter time's getting close, and the weather's going to change. And then, of course, the sun goes down sooner, which is happening here. Same probably as obviously there in Iowa. So that's really the only downside to all of this. But other than that, I mean, college football being back, NFL getting ready to start up, it's an exciting time. And
any snow up in the mountains there yet?
You, there's a little bit left over, I should say, as far as snowing currently. I haven't seen anything right now. Probably another month away or more.
Okay,
but it'll change, and it'll get dark quick, and
that's just the way it goes. It's dark now before 8 o'clock, or sun goes down. It's not really dark, but used to be 9 o'clock. It was that time. Now it's 8 o'clock, and you can just tell the difference.
That's the only thing I really don't like about this time of year. But I did want to ask you, 3 questions, but they're quick ones. Okay. So the game of the week that I'm really looking forward to on Saturday, outside of Iowa and Iowa State, is Penn State at West Virginia.
Right.
Big game.
Big game. And that's one of those things I talked about. That's a big opportunity for West Virginia / Big 12.
Yep. And I think it's a good opportunity for West Virginia to, I don't know if I like them to pull the upset, but Penn State's favored by 8.5. I'm not going to bet on it. I'm just not going to bet on sports.
And it's in Morgantown. Like spread wise, I would take not necessarily like you said, not to win the game necessarily. I think it'll come down to a kick at the end, or a play being made here or there. So I would pick Penn State to win. Like if it was a money line bet, I'd pick Penn State. But spread wise, I'd pick West Virginia.
That's kind of the way I'm leaning. And then the next 2 real quick. My Yahoo app is not really showing it, but let's predict what the score will be for the Iowa and Iowa State games.
Okay.
I'm going to take I'm going to take Iowa 27-10 versus Illinois State.
I'm going to go. This is where I wonder how much Tim Lester has and Seth Wallace has. Like, what are they going to do? Now, obviously, Kirk Ferentz is going to tell them what to do, and they're going to do all their meetings, and they're really not. But let's say they get up 27-0 or 27-7 in the halfway through the third quarter. If Kirk Ferentz was there, they might score one more time to get it to 35-7, or and then they might and finish 35-10, or might even just kind of sit on it, win exactly what you said, 27-10. Will Seth Wallace and Tim Lester, if they're in that situation, even if you pull the starters and Brendan Sullivan's in at quarterback, do you let him go? Do you see what he has? And can they get to 42-10? I'm going to say 42-10. I think they want to make a statement to their fans. Tim Lester wants to make a statement himself. Cade McNamara does. And then if Brendan Sullivan gets in, he wants everything we've been told. It is a competition. And if he gets in, now obviously he's going to do what he's told. That's just the part of doing it. But he's going to want to do everything he can to show that, hey, I'm your guy. And you want to see that out of quarterback. So I'm going to say 42-10, Iowa. I think it's a blowout. And I think they open it up a little bit.
I hope so. We talked about last week. I can't predict an Iowa blowout until I see this new offense in action.
I could be way off.
So I'm going to go more conservative, just a typical Iowa 27-10 type game. Start out pretty good. Second and third quarters are boring, and they kind of run away with it in the fourth. But that's my prediction on that one. And then the Iowa State game, I'm going to go Iowa State 40, but I am going to give North Dakota 20. Yeah. A little bit higher scoring game.
I was going to go 42-27. I think it's a lot. Okay. I think it's like 42-10. Maybe start of the fourth quarter or something like that. Iowa State pulls their guys with all the experience and all young guys that are actually still playing. That's what Iowa State has a lot of experience, but there's still a lot of sophomores. They played a lot of freshmen last year, so they're still just sophomores, and the people behind them are freshmen now. Not a lot of juniors and seniors that are the backups. They're young. They're talented, but they're young. And so I do think they'll give up a little bit late. So blowout, and it becomes less of a blowout, but a comfortable win no matter what. I mean, it's never in question, but maybe not as much as you would, not as big a win as you would like.
No, I agree. I think Iowa State handles them pretty easily.
Yeah.
North Dakota maybe keeps it closer than the score would say, but yeah, Iowa State gets the victory there.
Yeah. So we both have Iowa State and Iowa. I mean, I have Iowa scoring way more than you, but we both have Iowa State scoring quite a few points. And their offense, I mean, everything you see, all the returners, I think that's what they have to do. Their defense should be good, but their offense needs to score 35 or more points a game with the talent that they have.
Nope, it's going to be great starting tomorrow night. I've already got my fridge and freezer loaded up for the most part. I've got frozen pizzas, eggs.
Yep. You don't even have to move.
I've got corned beef hash. I got to go get some bacon tomorrow. I've already got some sausages I'm going to cook up. So probably Friday, Saturday for sure. Cook up a big old breakfast, put game day on, and my plan is to not move from the house Saturday at all.
That's what I was going to say. Are you going to be, and one thing that we're missing a little bit that people sometimes are not, and I was thinking about this, I'm like, you used to kind of know 11 a.m. You got the Big Fox game, which is a Big Ten game. You got the ESPN game, which is, kind of a second tier Big Ten game. And just, you kind of know where the games are and who's playing. CBS is at 2:30. The CBS 2:30 game is a big SEC game. That's not the case anymore. The Big Ten is that 2:30 CBS game. That's Iowa State in week 2. That's that game. You're going to hear the intro and it's going to be Brad Nessler calling that game, and it's going to be a Big Ten game. It's not going to be Alabama and LSU.
Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be the SEC. You know, the Hawkeyes are going to play on NBC this year, which I have no idea what time the NBC Big Ten game is. It's going to be weird to see who plays when and where, if everybody kind of understands what I'm saying. And that's where, you know, FS1 at 2:30, is that a Big 12 game? Is that a Big 10? Because it's Fox. You know, I don't know who everywhere. You know, I think the SEC is all on ESPN this year. So is that 7 o'clock, 7:30 Kirk Herbstreit game? Is that now going to be SEC games? Is that going to be Alabama, Georgia, or Alabama, LSU? Because it's ESPN on ABC. That's always kind of been a Pac-12 game or a Big Ten game. But is the Big Ten even on ESPN anymore? I mean, those are just questions I don't know the answer to. And like I said, I'm going to be at a tailgate and everything, and I'm going to be flipping channels and not knowing what the heck to do.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right on this. The weird thing is all these different channels, you know, like you mentioned, it used to be for Iowa, for example, right. They played at 11 o'clock Iowa time, like right. 9 out of 12 weeks every year.
ESPN or ESPN2 at 11 o'clock. Beth Mowens was on call.
And now it's all different. So that's why I have the Yahoo app downloaded, which I always like, because for me, it's going to be week to week. I can't look ahead. I mean, I can look ahead a little, but to keep track of it all, I'm just going to have to look the week of, okay, what time's this team playing?
Right.
What channel? Okay, they're playing on FS1. Oh, Iowa State's on ABC randomly, or, you know, Alabama's on Fox for some reason. It's going to be different. It's just going to be week to week, in my opinion.
Yeah. And when all these schools sign these deals with the TV companies, you get told what to do. And that's just the end. And everybody can be. And that was one of the big things. Oklahoma and Texas hated playing those 11 o'clock games. They wanted night games and everything. Well, it's going to be really funny when they're playing at 11 o'clock on ESPN. That's an ESPN game or an ESPN SEC game now. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it's going to be a Big Ten game like it's been for 25, 30 years.
Yeah, that'll probably be an ESPN game. You're right. Definitely with them joining the SECs. So, yeah, the channels are going to be tough. The times are going to move around, and it's going to take a little while to get used to. So, for someone like me and you as well, probably pay pretty good attention to college football, but it's just too much to keep track of long term. It's just going to be week to week. You look at the schedule and say, okay, I can watch this game. I can watch that one. This one I'm going to miss. What channels do I need? Do I have it on my streaming services that I use? You know, you mentioned a lot of people use YouTube. I'm on Hulu. Some people still have cable and DirecTV. There's a lot to figure out right now. It's not like it used to be.
Yeah. But we'll all figure it out. We'll all watch, and we'll love every minute of it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the highest rated college football season ever.
Well, I mean, we're already in this situation. Florida State lost to an unranked team, and years to now, essentially, they would have to run the table to get in the playoffs. And I still think they probably do. Well, they don't. They just have to get to the conference championship game and win it. But if they want an at-large, they need to run the table, and lose in the ACC championship game, and then you're holding your breath. That's where they're at now with that loss. And I believe they come back and play this week, and they play another conference game. Is that right? Did they play Boston College this week?
It's Monday night, I believe. I could pull it up right now. So
that's
Sunday
insane.
And Monday. There's only one. There's only one game on Sunday and Monday. Sunday is USC and UCLA, or LSU, I should say. Excuse me. Yeah. And then Monday night on ESPN, Boston College versus Florida State.
So that's two conference games on the 2nd of September already. That's insane.
Yeah, they're going to need to win that one. If they lose
and they
that one,
should. I mean, but that's just scheduling. So they're non-conference games. Obviously, they play Florida at the end of the year as a non-conference game. They're playing Notre Dame sometime in the middle of the season as a non-conference game. So I guess that's how you do it. But that's just crazy. They're going to have 2 conference games before some teams even barely played 1 game, period.
Yeah, their schedule's a little weird. They've got Memphis and Cal coming up after that. They've got actually
Cal's a
3 bye
conference
weeks.
game.
It looks like. Well, yeah, Cal's a conference game. They've got Notre Dame toward the end of the season, then Charleston Southern, then their schedule is very weird. That's going to be the case moving forward with the TV, right. The new deals that we've talked about in the TV schedule. It's just some of these teams, some years, you're just going to get a weird schedule.
Well, I mean, now that I do, I'm gonna have to look at Iowa State's next year, with them playing that conference game early. Which one game? And I get that. I get they don't want Iowa State to play Arkansas State in Ireland. I 100% understand. They want it to be 2 big games, or at least a conference game. So I understand what they're doing there. But then does Iowa State play 3 straight non-conference games, or since they've started to play Kansas State kind of at the end of the year, every year the last few years, so they pick up a conference game at the end, which I'd love that. And personally, is I would love to play Iowa in Thanksgiving weekend. That would be awesome. Have it rivalry week, Friday of Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. That's Iowa State. That would be absolutely awesome when everybody else plays their rivalry games.
No, I agree with that. It'd be pretty cool to have it at the end of the season. I just pulled up their schedule while you were talking here on Google. So obviously, as you mentioned, they play Kansas State there in Dublin to start the season.
Right. And then they have a bye, I'm pretty sure. They don't play.
According to this could be wrong. They do play South Dakota and Ames 7 days later.
Oh, okay.
And then they've got Iowa 7 days later as well. And then 7 days after that, Arkansas State. So they don't get any breaks there in the first 4. If that's correct, of course.
Yeah. So, and then that Arkansas State game is on the road, which is weird. Next year.
Yes, you did mention that last week. Yeah, down in Jonesboro.
Because we play them this year in Ames, next year down there.
Yeah, the schedules, the TVs, the times, it's all changing, and we're just all going to have to get used to it if we want to watch it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we went playing long again, but it's the beginning of football season, and we love talking about it. And so that's what everybody gets. Hour 45 minutes again. That's what we've kind of been the last 3 weeks. But when you get to talk football, we both enjoy it. And thanks for tuning in. Please rate, review, like, subscribe, tell a friend, tell a family member, and we appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.